Hello everyone, welcome back to Buried Files. Today we set sail into uncharted waters with 8 of the most disturbing cruise ship horror stories that the maritime industry hoped would never surface. These are not tales of rough seas or seasickness, but encounters with terror that occurred thousands of miles from shore, where help was nothing more than a distant memory and escape was impossible. In international waters, beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement, passengers and crew members have faced horrors that would make even the bravest souls question their decision to leave dry land. These accounts have been carefully documented from incident reports, crew testimonials, and passenger statements that were quietly buried in corporate archives and maritime databases. Each story reveals a different kind of nightmare that can unfold when you are trapped on a floating city with nowhere to run. The names and specific ship details have been altered to protect those involved and to prevent further distress to the families affected by these harrowing events. If you are new to Buried Files, make sure to subscribe for weekly uploads of the most disturbing true horror content that authorities would rather keep hidden from the public. Hit that notification bell, because when darkness calls from the depths of the ocean, you will want to be the first to hear these buried truths that were never meant to see daylight. Captain Theodore Johnson has sailed through hurricanes, typhoons, and rogue waves in his 30-year career, commanding cruise ships across every major ocean route in the world. But nothing in his extensive maritime experience prepared him for what happened during the Bermuda Triangle crossing of the Royal Majesty in October of 2023. What began as a routine repositioning cruise from Miami to New York became a journey into something that defies the natural laws of weather and time itself. Captain Johnson contacted me through a Maritime Lawyers Association after reading about my research into unexplained cruise ship incidents. He insisted on meeting in person at a small cafe in Newport, Rhode Island, far from any cruise terminal or shipping office. The man who sat across from me was weathered by decades at sea, his hands scarred from years of rope work and his eyes holding the distant look of someone who has stared into storms that could swallow cities whole. But when he spoke about the Royal Majesty incident, his voice carried a tremor that had nothing to do with age. The Royal Majesty was a mid-sized luxury vessel carrying 800 passengers on what the cruise line marketed as an off-season positioning cruise. These trips were typically offered at reduced rates to fill cabins, while the ship moved between seasonal home ports, attracting budget-conscious travelers and cruise enthusiasts who enjoyed the longer sea days. The October departure from Miami was supposed to be a pleasant 5-day journey north along the Atlantic coast. With no port stops and plenty of time for passengers to enjoy the ship's amenities while avoiding the hurricane season that had just ended. Captain Johnson had commanded the Royal Majesty for 7 years and had made this exact route dozens of times. He knew every current, every weather pattern, and every potential hazard along the way. The ship's course would take them through the western edge of the area commonly known as the Bermuda Triangle. But Johnson had never given much credence to the supernatural theory surrounding that region. In his experience, the triangle was simply a heavily trafficked shipping lane where statistical probability made accidents and disappearances more likely than in less traveled waters. The voyage began without incident on October 22nd. The weather forecast called for clear skies and calm seas, with a high-pressure system dominating the entire southeastern Atlantic. Captain Johnson expected smooth sailing all the way to New York, and for the first 36 hours, that is exactly what they experienced. Passengers enjoyed perfect weather on the deck, the ship's pools were busy, and the evening entertainment proceeded on schedule. The Royal Majesty was making excellent time, actually ahead of schedule due to favorable currents. The first sign of trouble came on October 24th at approximately 3:15 in the afternoon. Chief Meteorologist Sandra Chen contacted Captain Johnson on the bridge to report that their weather monitoring equipment was detecting an impossible atmospheric disturbance directly ahead of their course. According to the ship's radar and satellite data, a massive storm system was forming out of clear skies, appearing to generate spontaneously without any of the typical meteorological conditions that precede severe weather. Captain Johnson examined the radar displays himself and could not believe what he was seeing. The storm appeared to be perfectly circular, approximately 50 miles in diameter, with eye wall characteristics typical of a major hurricane. But hurricanes did not form in late October in the North Atlantic, and they certainly did not appear instantly without days or weeks of atmospheric development. More disturbing still, the storm was stationary, sitting directly in their path like a barrier that had been placed there deliberately. Captain Johnson contacted the National Hurricane Center in Miami, but they had no record of any storm activity in the region. According to their satellite imagery and atmospheric models, the weather conditions where the Royal Majesty was sailing remained clear and calm. When Johnson described what his ship's instruments were detecting, the meteorologists suggested that the radar equipment might be malfunctioning, possibly picking up interference from military exercises or atmospheric anomalies. But the storm was real, and it was growing larger. As the Royal Majesty continued on course, the circular wall of clouds rose from the horizon like a mountain range made of vapor and electricity. The wind began to pick up, and the seas started to show the characteristic swells that precede major weather systems. Captain Johnson ordered the ship to reduce speed and contacted his corporate office to request permission to alter course and avoid the storm entirely. The response from the cruise line's operations center was immediate and non-negotiable. The Royal Majesty was already behind schedule on several upcoming cruises, and any delay that required them to miss their New York arrival time would cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars in passenger compensation and port fees. Captain Johnson was ordered to maintain course and speed, with the assurance that the company's weather routing service showed no storm activity in the area. At 4:30 in the afternoon, the Royal Majesty entered the outer bands of the impossible storm. The wind increased to gale force within minutes, and the seas began building to heights that threatened the ship's stability. Captain Johnson had no choice but to implement severe weather protocols, securing all outdoor areas and ordering passengers to remain in their cabins. The ship's stabilizers were engaged to maximum capacity, but even with all systems operating properly, the Royal Majesty began experiencing the violent rolling motion characteristic of ships caught in major storms. What happened next was unlike anything Captain Johnson had experienced in 3 decades of maritime service. As the ship penetrated deeper into the storm system, the normal patterns of wind and wave began to behave in ways that violated basic meteorological principles. The wind would suddenly shift direction by 180 degrees without warning, creating cross seas that battered the ship from multiple directions simultaneously. Lightning struck the ocean surface continuously, not in the random patterns of normal storms, but in perfect geometric formations that seemed to follow the ship's movement through the water. Most disturbing of all, the storm appeared to be following them. When Captain Johnson attempted to alter course to escape the worst of the weather, the circular wall of clouds would shift position to maintain the Royal Majesty at its center. It was as if the ship had become trapped inside a moving cylinder of severe weather that pursued them regardless of their heading or speed. The storm's eye remained perfectly calm, but the wall clouds that surrounded them towered 30,000 feet into the atmosphere, creating a prison of wind and lightning that moved with them across the ocean. For 18 hours, the Royal Majesty sailed through conditions that should have torn the ship apart. Waves reaching 60 feet in height crashed over the upper decks, and wind speeds exceeded 120 miles per hour. The ship's communications equipment was repeatedly struck by lightning, cutting off all contact with the outside world. Emergency systems failed and were restored, failed again, and somehow continued to function despite being pushed far beyond their design limits. The passengers and crew experienced something even more unsettling than the severe weather conditions. Multiple people reported that their watches and clocks had stopped working, not from damage, but because time itself seemed to be behaving strangely within the storm. Some passengers claimed that they had been in their cabins for what felt like several days, while others insisted that only a few hours had passed since the storm began. The ship's chronometers, which are designed to maintain perfect accuracy regardless of weather conditions, showed different times throughout the vessel, as if each deck was experiencing time at a different rate. Captain Johnson's navigation equipment became completely unreliable within the storm. The GPS system showed the ship's position jumping randomly across hundreds of miles of ocean, sometimes indicating that they were in the middle of the Atlantic. Other times showing coordinates that placed them in the Gulf of Mexico or off the coast of Africa. The compass spun wildly, unable to find magnetic north, and the ship's inertial navigation system, which should have been unaffected by external conditions, provided readings that suggested they were traveling in multiple directions simultaneously. The most terrifying aspect of their experience was the realization that they were not alone in the storm. Through the lightning and driving rain, Captain Johnson and his bridge crew observed other vessels trapped in the same impossible weather system. Ships of different sizes and designs, some appearing to be modern cruise vessels while others looked like cargo ships or naval vessels from decades past. These ghostly ships would appear and disappear in the storm, sailing parallel courses through the same circular prison of weather, their lights visible through the rain like distant beacons from ships that should not have existed. On one occasion, Captain Johnson attempted to contact one of these phantom vessels using the ship's emergency radio frequencies. To his shock, he received a response from a captain who identified his ship as the SS Andrea Doria, the Italian ocean liner that had sunk in 1956 after colliding with another vessel off the coast of Nantucket. The voice on the radio spoke in accented English, reporting that his ship had been sailing through the same storm for what he believed to be several days, unable to find a way out of the circular weather pattern. After what the ship's clocks indicated was 18 hours, but what felt like several days to those who experienced it, the Royal Majesty finally emerged from the impossible storm. The transition was as sudden as the storm's initial appearance, with the ship sailing out of hurricane-force winds into perfectly calm seas and clear skies within the space of a few minutes. The storm continued to rage behind them, visible on the horizon as a perfect circle of dark clouds and lightning. But it no longer followed their movement across the water. When Captain Johnson was finally able to re-establish communication with the outside world, he discovered that the Royal Majesty had been missing for 3 days. The Coast Guard had launched a massive search and rescue operation, and the cruise line had been preparing to notify passengers' families that the ship was presumed lost at sea. According to every external observation, including satellite tracking and radar monitoring, the Royal Majesty had simply vanished from all detection systems for 72 hours before reappearing exactly on schedule at its original destination. The passengers and crew retained vivid memories of their experience in the impossible storm. But when they attempted to document what had happened, they discovered that many of their electronic devices had malfunctioned. Photos taken during the storm showed only static or complete darkness, despite the continuous lightning that had illuminated the scene. Video recordings contained only audio of wind and rain, with no visual evidence of the conditions they had experienced. Even the ship's official logs had been corrupted, showing only routine entries for a peaceful cruise with excellent weather conditions. The cruise line's corporate investigation concluded that the Royal Majesty had experienced a minor technical problem that had temporarily interfered with its tracking systems, but that no severe weather had been encountered during the voyage. Captain Johnson was ordered to sign a statement confirming that the cruise had proceeded normally, and he was warned that discussing the incident with passengers or media outlets would result in immediate termination and legal action. Captain Johnson retired from cruise ship command 6 months after the Royal Majesty incident. He now works as a harbor pilot in Newport, guiding commercial vessels safely into port. But he refuses to accept assignments that would take him more than 20 miles from shore. He has studied weather patterns and maritime records extensively since his retirement, discovering reports of similar incidents dating back over a century, all involving ships that encountered impossible storms in the same area of the Atlantic Ocean. The Royal Majesty continues to sail regular cruise routes, but Captain Johnson learned from former colleagues that the ship's officers have standing orders to avoid the Bermuda Triangle region entirely, regardless of weather conditions or scheduling requirements. The official reason given to passengers is that the route has been changed to provide better scenic views. But Captain Johnson knows the truth. Somewhere in the depths of the Atlantic, the storm that never ended continues to rage, waiting for the next ship to sail into its circular prison of wind and lightning, where time moves differently and the ghosts of lost vessels sail forever through weather that should not exist in the natural world. Working the night shift on a cruise ship is not for everyone. Just ask Bethany Walsh from Portland, Oregon, who spent 2 years in the bowels of luxury liners before what she experienced forced her to abandon maritime work forever. Bethany contacted me 6 months ago through an encrypted email account, refusing to provide her real name until our third conversation. What she told me about her time working as a night maintenance supervisor aboard the cruise ship Pacific Dreams has kept me awake for weeks, questioning everything I thought I knew about what happens in the hidden depths of these floating cities after midnight. Bethany started working for Oceanic Cruise Lines in March of 2023, recruited through a maritime employment agency that specialized in placing American workers on international vessels. The pay was exceptional, nearly double what she could make in any shore-based maintenance position, and the contract included free room and board for 18-month assignments. She was assigned to the Pacific Dreams, a massive vessel that carried over 4,000 passengers and employed nearly 1,500 crew members from dozens of different countries. The ship operated on a continuous loop between Seattle and Alaska, with stops in Ketchikan, Juneau, and Skagway during the summer months. Bethany's responsibilities included maintaining the mechanical systems in the lower decks of the ship, areas that passengers never saw and most crew members rarely visited. These levels house the engine rooms, water treatment facilities, electrical systems, and the maze of service corridors that allowed crew members to move throughout the ship without being seen by guests. Her shift ran from midnight to 8 in the morning, and for the first 6 weeks, everything seemed normal. She would receive work orders through the ship's computer system, checking on ventilation systems, repairing plumbing issues, and ensuring that the machinery that kept the ship running operated smoothly throughout the night. The work was physically demanding, but straightforward, and Bethany appreciated the solitude of working while most of the ship slept. The first sign that something was wrong came during her 7th week aboard the Pacific Dreams. Bethany was performing routine maintenance in one of the lower engine compartments when she heard voices echoing through the ventilation system. At first, she assumed it was crew members from another department working late. But as she listened more carefully, she realized the voices were speaking in a language she did not recognize. More disturbing was the tone of the conversation, which sounded urgent, almost panicked, despite the fact that all ship systems were operating normally. Bethany followed the sound through the service corridors, trying to locate the source of the voices. The ship's lower levels were designed like a three-dimensional maze, with narrow passages branching off in every direction and emergency lighting that cast eerie shadows on the metal walls. As she moved deeper into the ship's interior, the voices grew louder, but she could never seem to get close enough to identify where they were coming from. After 20 minutes of searching, the voices suddenly stopped. Bethany found herself in a section of the ship she had never seen before. Despite having studied the architectural plans extensively during her orientation, the corridor she was standing in was not marked on any of the ship's official layouts, and the walls were constructed from a different type of metal than the rest of the vessel. Most disturbing of all, the air in this section felt different, heavier somehow, and carried a smell that reminded her of deep ocean water. When Bethany tried to retrace her steps, she discovered that the passages she had used to reach this mysterious area had somehow changed. Corridors that should have led back to familiar sections of the ship instead opened onto rooms filled with machinery she did not recognize. After 2 hours of increasingly frantic searching, she finally found a stairwell that led back to the main engine deck, emerging near her original work location as if she had never left. The next morning, Bethany reported the incident to her supervisor, Chief Engineer Rodriguez, describing the strange voices in the unmarked section of the ship. Rodriguez listened to her account with a blank expression, then pulled up the ship's blueprints on his computer screen. According to the official plans, there was no corridor in the location Bethany described, and the entire lower level was accounted for in the ship's documentation. Rodriguez suggested that Bethany might have gotten turned around in the maze-like passages, a common experience for new crew members working the night shift alone. But Bethany knew what she had experienced, and over the following weeks, the strange incidents continued to escalate. She began hearing machinery operating in areas where no equipment should exist, following the sounds through service tunnels that seemed to reconfigure themselves each time she attempted to map their layout. On 3 separate occasions, she encountered crew members she did not recognize, wearing uniforms that bore the ship's logo but were cut from fabric that looked decades out of date. When she tried to speak to these individuals, they would respond in that same unknown language she had heard through the ventilation system, then disappear into passages that Bethany could never locate again. The most terrifying incident occurred during her 12th week aboard the Pacific Dreams. Bethany was performing a routine inspection of the water treatment facility when she discovered that one of the large filtration tanks was operating despite being officially offline for maintenance. The tank was sealed and locked, but she could hear the distinctive sound of water circulation and the hum of filtration equipment running at full capacity. According to the ship's computer system, the tank had been drained and shut down 3 days earlier for scheduled cleaning. Using her master maintenance key, Bethany unlocked the tank access panel and climbed down the metal ladder into the interior chamber. What she found inside defied all logical explanation. The tank was filled with water, but not the clear, treated seawater that the ship's filtration system normally processed. This water was dark, almost black, and thick with an oily substance that clung to the tank walls like paint. Floating in this viscous liquid were objects that Bethany initially mistook for pieces of debris. As her eyes adjusted to the dim emergency lighting inside the tank, she realized that the objects were personal belongings. Cruise ship identification bracelets, the plastic wristbands that passengers received when they boarded the ship, wallets and purses, some still containing identification cards and credit cards, jewelry, including wedding rings and expensive watches. Most disturbing of all, scattered throughout this collection of abandoned possessions, were crew uniforms from different cruise lines, some bearing company logos that Bethany recognized and others that she had never seen before. Bethany climbed out of the tank as quickly as possible and immediately called Chief Engineer Rodriguez on her radio. When he arrived 15 minutes later with 2 other senior staff members, the tank was empty and bone dry, exactly as it should have been for scheduled maintenance. The computer system showed no record of the tank being operational, and the water lines that fed into the filtration unit were physically disconnected. When Bethany insisted that she had seen the tank filled with contaminated water and personal belongings, Rodriguez ordered her to report to the ship's medical facility for a psychological evaluation. The ship's doctor, a Romanian physician named Dr. Popescu, conducted a thorough examination and questioned Bethany extensively about her mental health history, substance use, and sleeping patterns. He concluded that she was suffering from exhaustion and stress related to working alone during the night shift, a condition he claimed was common among crew members who spent extended periods in the ship's lower levels. Dr. Popescu prescribed sleeping medication and recommended that Bethany be transferred to day shift duties, but the ship's staffing requirements made this impossible. Instead, Rodriguez assigned another crew member, a young man from the Philippines named Carlos, to work alongside Bethany during her night shift. Carlos had been employed by the cruise line for over 3 years and was familiar with the ship's mechanical systems. For the first week of working together, the strange incidents seemed to stop entirely. Carlos was friendly and competent, and Bethany began to wonder if Dr. Popescu had been correct about her experiencing stress-related hallucinations. But during their second week working together, Carlos disappeared. Bethany was performing a routine check of the electrical systems on Deck 4 when she realized that Carlos had not responded to her radio calls for over an hour. She searched the areas where he was supposed to be working, following the maintenance schedule they had planned together, but found no sign of him. His tools were still laid out on a workbench in the engine room, and his radio was sitting beside them, but Carlos was nowhere to be found. Bethany contacted the ship's security department and reported Carlos missing. A comprehensive search was conducted throughout the ship, involving crew members from every department and lasting nearly 6 hours. They checked passenger areas, crew quarters, storage rooms, and every accessible section of the ship's mechanical systems. Security reviewed footage from every camera on the vessel, but found no evidence of Carlos leaving his assigned work area. According to the ship's computer records, his electronic keycard had not been used to access any doors or restricted areas since the beginning of their shift. Carlos was never found. The official report stated that he had likely fallen overboard while working near one of the ship's lower-level service ports, despite the fact that these areas were equipped with safety barriers and security alarms. The cruise line's corporate office launched an internal investigation, but concluded that Carlos had been careless and violated safety protocols. His family in the Philippines was notified of his death and received a settlement payment, but no body was ever recovered. After Carlos's disappearance, Bethany was once again assigned to work the night shift alone. But now, in addition to the strange voices and unexplained machinery sounds, she began experiencing something far more terrifying. She would encounter Carlos during her rounds, appearing in corridors and work areas just as he had when he was alive. At first, Bethany thought she was hallucinating, but Carlos would respond to her questions and provide information about maintenance issues that only he could have known. These encounters with the ghostly Carlos led Bethany to a horrific realization about the nature of her experiences aboard the Pacific Dreams. The mysterious crew members she had been encountering, the ones wearing outdated uniforms and speaking in unknown languages, were not living people. They were the spirits of previous crew members who had disappeared while working on the ship, trapped forever in the vessel's lower levels, continuing to perform their duties even in death. Bethany completed her 18-month contract, but never worked on another cruise ship again. She now lives in Portland, working as a building maintenance supervisor, and refuses to travel by sea. The nightmares about the voices in the ventilation system and the dark water in the filtration tank continue to this day. And she believes that somewhere in the depths of the Pacific Dreams, Carlos is still working the night shift, waiting for someone to join him in the endless darkness below the passenger decks. Three months ago, Detective Marcus Rivera from Miami PD contacted me about a case that still keeps him awake at night. What he shared with me was not just another missing person report, but something that challenges everything we understand about what can happen to someone aboard a floating city thousands of miles from shore. Marcus had been investigating maritime crimes for over 15 years, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for the disappearance of Jennifer Walsh aboard the cruise ship Atlantic Majesty in September of last year. Jennifer was a 32-year-old marketing executive from Denver who had saved for 3 years to take her dream vacation. She boarded the Atlantic Majesty in Fort Lauderdale on September 15th, bound for a 10-day Caribbean cruise that would take her to St. Thomas, Barbados, and Cozumel. She was traveling alone, which the cruise staff noted during boarding, assigning her to cabin 8247 on the 8th deck. Jennifer had specifically requested a balcony room with an ocean view, telling the booking agent that she wanted to watch the sunrise every morning from her private space. The first 3 days of the cruise passed without incident. Jennifer attended the welcome party, participated in trivia nights, and even won a small prize in the ship's casino. She was friendly, but kept mostly to herself, spending her evenings reading on her balcony and taking photographs of the sunset. The ship's photographer captured several images of her during formal dinner nights, showing a woman who appeared relaxed and genuinely enjoying her vacation. Nothing about her behavior suggested distress or any intention to harm herself. On the 4th night, as the ship sailed between St. Thomas and Barbados, Jennifer attended the captain's dinner in the main dining room. She was seated at a table with 6 other passengers, including an elderly couple from Wisconsin and a family from Texas. According to the other diners, Jennifer was in good spirits, discussing her plans to visit the botanical gardens in Barbados and showing everyone photos from her phone of the previous port stops. She finished her meal around 9:30 in the evening and mentioned to her table mates that she was going to get some fresh air on her balcony before bed. The ship's security cameras tracked Jennifer's movements through the corridors as she returned to her cabin at 9:45 that night. The electronic keycard system recorded her entering room 8247 at 9:47. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Jennifer Walsh alive. But what happened next is where Detective Rivera's investigation takes a disturbing turn into the impossible. At 6:15 the following morning, Jennifer failed to appear for the scheduled shore excursion to Barbados that she had booked and paid for in advance. When the tour guide called her room, there was no answer. A steward was sent to perform a wellness check using the master key to enter her cabin. What they found defied all logical explanation. Jennifer was gone, but her belongings remained exactly as if she had simply stepped out for a moment. Her bed had not been slept in. Her evening dress from the captain's dinner was hanging neatly in the closet, and her pajamas were laid out on the bed as if she had been preparing to change. Most disturbing of all, her balcony door was locked from the inside, with the security chain still engaged. The only way to secure that chain was from inside the cabin, yet Jennifer was nowhere to be found. Her passport, wallet, phone, and all personal belongings were undisturbed in their exact locations. The ship's head of security, Captain Rodriguez, immediately launched an internal investigation. They reviewed every second of security footage from the corridors leading to Jennifer's cabin. The cameras showed her entering her room, but no footage existed of her leaving. Not through her door, not through any service corridors, not through any public areas of the ship. It was as if she had simply vanished from a locked room 8 floors above the ocean. Detective Rivera became involved when the ship returned to Fort Lauderdale and the case was reported to local authorities. He had handled numerous cruise ship incidents before, mostly involving passengers who had fallen overboard or taken their own lives. But Jennifer's case was different. There was no evidence of struggle, no signs of distress, and no possible way she could have left her cabin without being detected by the ship's extensive surveillance system. The investigation revealed even more disturbing details. The ship's computer logs showed that Jennifer's keycard had been used to enter her cabin at 9:47 p.m., but there was no record of the card being used again. The balcony door's electronic sensors indicated it had been opened briefly at 10:15 p.m., presumably when Jennifer stepped outside for air. But the door's log showed it was securely locked from the inside by 10:20 p.m. and never opened again. The most unsettling discovery came when Detective Rivera examined the ship's passenger manifest and crew records. According to the ship's official documentation, Jennifer Walsh had never been on board the Atlantic Majesty. Her name appeared nowhere in the computer systems. Despite the fact that her credit card had been charged for the cruise, her luggage had been delivered to her cabin, and multiple passengers and crew members had interacted with her. When Rivera demanded to see the boarding footage, he was told that the cameras had malfunctioned during the boarding process on September 15th. The cruise line's corporate office claimed they had no record of Jennifer's booking, despite the fact that Rivera had copies of all her confirmation emails and receipts. When he contacted the passengers who had shared her dinner table, they all confirmed that Jennifer had been there, had spoken with them, and had shown them photographs on her phone. But when Rivera asked to see any photos they might have taken during the dinner, every single image that should have included Jennifer showed empty space where she had been sitting. Detective Rivera's investigation took another bizarre turn when he attempted to contact Jennifer's family in Denver. According to her emergency contact information, she lived with her sister Maria Walsh. But when Rivera called the number, the woman who answered had never heard of Jennifer Walsh. She had been living alone in the apartment for over 5 years and insisted no one named Jennifer had ever lived there. The address on Jennifer's identification led to an apartment that had been vacant for months. Even more disturbing, when Rivera tried to trace Jennifer's credit card and banking information, he discovered that the accounts had been closed years before the cruise took place. Her social security number belonged to a woman who had died in 2018. Her driver's license was valid, but the DMV had no record of issuing it. Every piece of identification Jennifer had used to board the ship appeared to be legitimate, but none of it could be traced back to a real person. The ship's crew members who remembered interacting with Jennifer began to report strange experiences. The dining room staff recalled serving her meals, but when they checked their records, there was no evidence of her dining account being used. The housekeeping staff remembered cleaning her cabin and seeing her belongings, but they could not explain why there was no record of the room being occupied. Some crew members started questioning their own memories, wondering if they had imagined the encounters entirely. Detective Rivera spent weeks trying to piece together any evidence of Jennifer's existence before the cruise. He found no employment records, no rental history, no family connections, and no social media presence. It was as if Jennifer Walsh had materialized specifically to board the Atlantic Majesty and then vanished without leaving any trace of ever having existed. The only proof that she had been real were the memories of the people who had met her and the photographs that somehow showed empty spaces where she should have been. The case officially remains unsolved, classified as a missing person investigation despite the impossibility of proving the person ever existed. Detective Rivera has continued to follow up on similar reports from other cruise ships, discovering a pattern of passengers who disappear from locked cabins, leaving behind belongings but no official record of ever having been aboard. The cruise industry's response has been to deny any knowledge of these incidents, claiming that their security systems make such disappearances impossible. But late at night, When Detective Rivera reviews the case files, he cannot shake the feeling that Jennifer Walsh was real, that she existed for those brief days aboard the Atlantic Majesty, and that whatever took her might still be out there, selecting passengers from ships sailing in the darkest depths of international waters. The ocean keeps its secrets, and sometimes, it seems, those secrets include people who were never supposed to exist at all. Dr. Amanda Foster thought she had seen everything in her 15 years as a cruise ship physician. From heart attacks in the middle of the Atlantic to bizarre tropical diseases picked up at exotic ports, she had treated medical emergencies that would challenge doctors at major metropolitan hospitals. But nothing in her extensive experience prepared her for what happened when the passenger from cabin 7429 was brought to the medical facility aboard the Caribbean Princess in November of 2023. Dr. Foster contacted me through a secure medical communication network used by maritime physicians to discuss cases that fall outside normal protocols. She had read about my research into unexplained cruise ship incidents and believed that her experience needed to be documented, despite the legal implications of discussing patient information. What she shared with me during our encrypted video conference has fundamentally changed how I view the boundaries between medical science and the supernatural. The Caribbean Princess was on day 6 of a 14-day repositioning cruise from San Juan to Barcelona, carrying nearly 3,000 passengers across the Atlantic during the quiet period between hurricane season and winter storms. Dr. Foster was working her usual shift in the ship's medical center, a fully equipped facility located on Deck 2 that rivaled many land-based emergency rooms in terms of technology and capabilities. The medical bay was designed to handle everything from minor injuries to major surgical emergencies, with a staff of 3 doctors and 6 nurses providing 24-hour coverage. The incident began at 2:30 in the morning when Dr. Foster received an urgent call from the ship's security department. A passenger in cabin 7429 had pressed their emergency call button repeatedly, but when crew members responded to the cabin, they found the door locked from the inside with no response to their knocking. The passenger, identified as Robert Manning, a 63-year-old retiree from Phoenix, Arizona, had been traveling alone and had not been seen since the previous evening's dinner service. Using the master key system, security officers entered the cabin to perform a wellness check. What they found inside defied immediate explanation. Robert was lying on his bed, conscious but completely unresponsive to verbal commands or physical stimuli. His eyes were open and tracking movement, but he showed no recognition of the people around him or any awareness of his surroundings. More disturbing still, his body appeared to be undergoing some kind of rapid physical transformation that the security officers had never encountered before. When the medical team arrived at cabin 7429, Dr. Foster immediately noticed that Robert's skin had taken on an unusual pale gray color, almost translucent in appearance. His breathing was shallow but regular, and his heart rate was significantly slower than normal for someone his age. Most alarming of all, his body temperature had dropped to 89 degrees Fahrenheit, well below the threshold that should have triggered hypothermia symptoms. Yet, he showed no signs of distress or discomfort. Dr. Foster ordered Robert to be transported immediately to the medical facility for comprehensive examination and treatment. As the medical team prepared to move him, they discovered that his condition was deteriorating rapidly in ways that contradicted every principle of human physiology that Dr. Foster had learned during her medical training. Robert's pulse continued to slow, but instead of showing signs of cardiac distress, his vital signs remained surprisingly stable. His skin was becoming increasingly translucent, revealing the network of blood vessels beneath. Yet, his circulation appeared to be functioning normally. In the medical bay, Dr. Foster conducted extensive tests using the ship's diagnostic equipment. Blood work revealed results that should have been impossible for a living human being. Robert's blood chemistry showed levels of certain compounds that were consistent with advanced decomposition. Yet his organs continued to function, and his brain activity remained measurably active. His body temperature continued to drop, reaching levels that should have resulted in death. But his vital signs persisted in defying medical logic. Most disturbing of all, Robert's physical appearance continued to change throughout the night. His hair began falling out in large clumps, and his fingernails started to separate from his fingers. His skin took on the waxy, sunken appearance typically associated with corpses that had been deceased for several days. Yet, he remained conscious, his eyes following the medical staff around the room, occasionally blinking in response to bright lights or sudden movements. Dr. Foster contacted the ship's captain and requested immediate medical evacuation to the nearest hospital facility. But their location in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean made helicopter rescue impossible. The closest port was still 4 days away, and Robert's condition appeared to be progressing towards something that Dr. Foster had never encountered in medical literature. She began researching rare diseases and toxic exposures that might explain his symptoms, but found no documented cases that matched what she was observing. On the second day of Robert's treatment, other passengers began reporting unusual experiences related to his presence on the ship. Several people who had been seated near him at dinner the night before his collapse began complaining of vivid nightmares involving themes of death and decay. Others reported feeling inexplicably drawn to visit the medical facility, despite having no medical needs themselves. Most unsettling of all, passengers staying in cabins near 7429 began experiencing unexplained phenomena, including temperature drops, strange odors, and the sensation of being watched by invisible presences. Dr. Foster ordered Robert to be isolated in the medical facility's quarantine room, concerned that his condition might be contagious despite the lack of evidence for any known infectious disease. But even in isolation, his influence on the ship's passengers continued to manifest in increasingly disturbing ways. The medical staff began experiencing fatigue and disorientation during their shifts, and several nurses reported having dreams about Robert's condition that were so vivid they felt like memories of events that had not yet occurred. On the third day, Robert's transformation reached a critical stage. His body had taken on the complete appearance of a corpse that had been deceased for weeks. Yet he remained conscious and responsive to external stimuli. His pulse had slowed to barely detectable levels, and his breathing became so shallow that it could only be measured with sophisticated monitoring equipment. Dr. Foster realized that she was witnessing something that challenged the fundamental definitions of life and death. The most terrifying moment came when Robert began to speak for the first time since his collapse. His voice was barely a whisper, but the words he spoke were in languages that none of the medical staff recognized. Dr. Foster recorded his vocalizations and later consulted with linguistics experts who identified fragments of ancient dialects that had been extinct for centuries. Robert seemed to be recounting events and describing places that could not possibly be part of his personal experience. As the ship approached its scheduled stop in the Azores, Dr. Foster made preparations to transfer Robert to a hospital facility on the island where more advanced diagnostic equipment might provide answers to his impossible condition. But on the morning of their arrival in port, she discovered that Robert's bed in the quarantine room was empty. The monitoring equipment showed that his vital signs had simply stopped at 4:17 a.m., but there was no body to be found. The search for Robert's remains consumed the entire medical facility and security staff for hours. Every compartment, storage area, and possible hiding place was examined, but no trace of him could be found. The bed where he had been lying showed no evidence of decomposition or bodily fluids that should have been present if he had died in the normal manner. His hospital gown was folded neatly on the bed, as if he had simply undressed and walked away, despite his condition making such movement physically impossible. The most disturbing discovery came when Dr. Foster reviewed the security footage from the quarantine room. The cameras showed Robert lying motionless on the bed throughout the night, with no indication of any change in his condition or position. But at 4:17 a.m., the exact moment when his monitoring equipment registered the cessation of vital signs, the video feed showed only an empty bed, as if Robert had never been there at all. The ship's computer systems showed no record of Robert Manning ever having been aboard the Caribbean Princess. His cabin assignment, meal charges, and medical records had all been erased from the database, despite Dr. Foster's detailed documentation of his case. When she contacted the cruise line's corporate medical office to report the incident, they insisted that no passenger matching Robert's description had been on the ship during the voyage. Dr. Foster kept copies of all medical records and test results from Robert's case. But when she attempted to analyze them later, she discovered that the blood samples and tissue specimens she had collected showed no anomalies. The laboratory results that had revealed impossible blood chemistry now appeared completely normal, as if the tests had been conducted on a healthy individual. Even her own written notes about Robert's condition had somehow been altered, describing routine medical care for minor seasickness rather than the horrifying transformation she had witnessed. 6 months after the Caribbean Princess incident, Dr. Foster resigned from cruise ship medical service and returned to practice in a land-based hospital. She now works in emergency medicine in Houston, Texas, where she has not encountered any cases that challenge the natural laws of life and death. But she continues to research maritime medical anomalies, discovering reports from other ship doctors who have treated patients whose conditions defied medical explanation. Dr. Foster believes that something about the isolation and unique environment of cruise ships creates conditions where the boundaries between life and death become permeable. She theorizes that certain passengers may be vulnerable to influences that exist in the vast emptiness of the deep ocean, forces that can alter human physiology in ways that medical science cannot yet understand or explain. Whatever happened to Robert Manning in the medical facility of the Caribbean Princess, Dr. Foster is certain that he was not the first passenger to undergo such a transformation, and he will not be the last. Every cruise ship has its ghost stories, but executive chef Roberto Martinez from San Antonio never believed them until his final night shift on the Oceanic Majesty in December of 2023. Roberto had worked in cruise ship kitchens for 12 years, rising through the ranks from prep cook to head chef, managing food service for over 3,000 passengers daily. He had heard every maritime superstition and galley ghost tale from crew members around the world, dismissing them all as the product of isolation, exhaustion, and too much time spent in the windowless depths of massive ships. But what he experienced in the main dining room during the early hours of December 15th changed his perspective on what might linger in the spaces where thousands of people have eaten, celebrated, and said their final goodbyes to the sea. Roberto contacted me through a culinary professionals network after hearing about my research into unexplained cruise ship phenomena. He was reluctant to share his story initially, concerned about the impact on his reputation in the tight-knit cruise industry, where word of unusual behavior travels quickly between ships and companies. But the events he experienced aboard the Oceanic Majesty had haunted him for months, disrupting his sleep and forcing him to question his rational understanding of the world. During our conversation, conducted over secure video chat from his new position at a landlocked restaurant in Texas, Roberto spoke with the precision of someone who has spent years managing complex operations under pressure. But his hands trembled slightly when he described the supernatural encounters that ended his maritime career. The Oceanic Majesty was a luxury vessel operating 7-day Caribbean itineraries from Fort Lauderdale, carrying a passenger capacity of 350,200 people with a crew of over 1,000. Roberto oversaw food service in the ship's 3 main dining rooms, managing a team of 45 chefs, cooks, and food service assistants who prepared and served nearly 10,000 meals daily. The main dining room, located on Deck 5, was an elegant space that could seat 800 guests simultaneously, featuring crystal chandeliers, formal table settings, and a carefully orchestrated dinner service that ran like clockwork every evening of the cruise. December had been an unusually busy month for the Oceanic Majesty, with back-to-back sailings carrying holiday travelers seeking to escape winter weather and celebrate the season in tropical waters. Roberto's team had been working extended hours to accommodate special holiday menus, themed dinner events, and the increased demand that came with full passenger capacity. By the time the ship departed Fort Lauderdale on December 10th for what would be Roberto's final cruise, both he and his staff were exhausted from weeks of intensive food service operations. The first indication that something unusual was happening came on December 13th during the ship's sea day between Cozumel and Nassau. Roberto was conducting his routine late-night inspection of the dining room facilities, checking that all equipment had been properly cleaned and secured after the evening service. The main dining room should have been completely empty and dark except for emergency lighting, with all tables cleared and chairs stacked for overnight cleaning. But as Roberto entered the dining room at approximately 2:15 in the morning, he immediately noticed that something was wrong with the atmosphere in the space. The dining room felt different than it should have during the quiet hours after midnight. There was a sense of occupancy, as if the space was still filled with diners, despite being completely empty and dark. Roberto could smell food aromas lingering in the air, not the usual odors of cleaning chemicals and sanitized surfaces, but the rich scents of prepared meals, fresh bread, and fine wine that typically filled the room during dinner service. More unsettling still, he could hear the faint sounds of conversation and dining activity echoing from the empty space. Too quiet to understand, but clear enough to suggest that hundreds of people were enjoying their meals at tables that showed no sign of recent use. Roberto checked the lighting controls and ventilation systems, thinking that a malfunction might explain the unusual sensory experiences he was having. But all equipment was operating normally, and the dining room's environmental controls showed standard readings for temperature, humidity, and air circulation. The sounds of phantom dinner conversation continued as he moved through the empty space, seeming to come from different areas of the dining room, but always remaining just beyond his ability to locate the source. As Roberto continued his inspection, he began to notice visual anomalies that challenged his understanding of what he was observing. Tables that appeared empty from a distance seemed to show the shadows of place settings when he approached them directly, as if invisible guests were seated and enjoying their meals. Chair positions would shift slightly when he was not looking directly at them, suggesting that unseen diners were adjusting their seating throughout their phantom meal service. Most disturbing of all, Roberto began to see brief glimpses of movement in his peripheral vision, figures that appeared to be elegantly dressed passengers moving through the dining room, but vanished whenever he turned to look at them directly. The supernatural activity in the main dining room intensified over the following 2 nights. On December 14th, Roberto entered the dining room for his routine inspection to find that several tables appeared to be set for service, despite the fact that his staff had cleared and cleaned all surfaces hours earlier. Fine china, crystal stemware, and silver cutlery were arranged in perfect formal place settings, complete with cloth, napkins, and fresh flower centerpieces that had not been there during the evening's dinner service. When Roberto examined these mysterious table settings more closely, he discovered that the dinnerware bore the crests and logos of cruise lines that had not operated ships for decades. Roberto immediately contacted his assistant chef to verify that no unauthorized person had entered the dining room to set up these elaborate table arrangements. The assistant confirmed that the dining room had been secured according to standard protocols, with all access doors locked and the cleaning staff completing their work hours earlier. Security footage from the dining room showed no evidence of anyone entering the space. Yet the formal table settings remained visible and could be touched and moved like any physical objects. As Roberto attempted to clear away the mysterious place settings, he began to experience the most intense supernatural encounter of his cruise ship career. The phantom sounds of dinner conversation grew louder and more distinct, and he could clearly hear the voices of multiple guests discussing their meals, sharing travel stories, and celebrating special occasions. The voices spoke in various languages and accents, suggesting diners from different countries and time periods. But all seemed to be enjoying the same elegant dinner service that Roberto's team provided every evening. More alarming still, Roberto began to see the ghostly diners themselves. Translucent figures in formal evening wear appeared at the mysteriously set tables, raising wine glasses and toasts, cutting invisible food with antique cutlery, and engaging in animated conversation with dining companions who flickered in and out of visibility. The phantom guests appeared to represent different eras of cruise ship travel, from early 20th century ocean liner passengers in period clothing to more recent travelers wearing modern formal attire. Roberto watched in fascination and terror as this supernatural dinner service played out before him. The ghostly diners seemed completely unaware of his presence, focused entirely on their meals and conversations as if they were attending an actual dinner event. Occasionally, one of the phantom guests would gesture toward him or appear to make eye contact, but their attention would quickly return to their invisible companions and the elaborate meal they were consuming. The most disturbing aspect of this paranormal dining experience was Roberto's growing realization that some of the ghostly guests appeared to be passengers who had died while aboard cruise ships. Through his years of maritime service, Roberto had heard stories of passengers who suffered heart attacks, strokes, or other fatal medical emergencies during their vacations, and he began to recognize some of the phantom diners from descriptions he had heard of deceased passengers from various cruise lines and ships. On his final night aboard the Oceanic Majesty, December 15th, Roberto entered the main dining room to find the supernatural dinner service in full swing. Every table was occupied by ghostly diners, the air filled with the sounds of conversation, laughter, and clinking cutlery. The phantom guests were dressed in formal attire from different time periods, creating a surreal scene that spanned decades of cruise ship history. Crystal chandeliers that had been dimmed for the night were blazing with light, illuminating the spectral gathering with warm, golden radiance that should not have been possible with the electrical systems in their current configuration. As Roberto stood in the doorway, watching this impossible scene, one of the ghostly diners, an elderly woman in 1950s evening wear, turned toward him and gestured for him to approach her table. Against his better judgment, Roberto walked toward the phantom guest, drawn by a compulsion he could not resist. The elderly woman spoke to him in a voice that seemed to come from across decades, telling him that she had been waiting years for someone who could see and hear the eternal dinner service that continued every night in the main dining room. The ghostly woman explained that she and the other phantom diners were passengers who had died while aboard various cruise ships, but their spirits had been drawn to continue the elegant dining experiences that had brought them such joy during their final voyages. The main dining room of the Oceanic Majesty, she said, had become a gathering place for these culinary spirits, where they could recreate the formal dinner services that represented the height of luxury travel and social celebration. Roberto listened to the Phantom Woman's explanation while surrounded by dozens of ghostly diners who continued their eternal meal service. She told him that cruise ship dining rooms accumulate the emotional energy of thousands of passengers who celebrate special occasions, anniversaries, and life milestones over elaborate meals. And that this positive energy creates a supernatural magnetism that draws the spirits of deceased passengers back to continue their dining experiences in the afterlife. When Roberto finally left the main dining room that night, the supernatural dinner service was still in progress, with phantom guests raising toasts and sharing meals that existed only in the realm of memory and spirit. He completed his shift and disembarked the Oceanic Majesty the following morning, never to work aboard another cruise ship again. The official records showed no unusual incidents during the voyage, and the dining room security cameras recorded only empty tables and darkened spaces during the hours when Roberto witnessed the ghostly dinner service. Roberto now works as executive chef at a prestigious restaurant in San Antonio, where the dining room empties completely after closing time and remains silent until morning. But he continues to research maritime supernatural phenomena, discovering reports from other cruise ship food service managers who have encountered similar phantom dining experiences in main dining rooms around the world. He believes that cruise ships, with their combination of formal dining traditions and the emotional intensity of vacation experiences, create unique conditions where the spirits of passengers can return to continue celebrating the meals that brought them happiness during their final journeys at sea. Travel agent Jennifer Kim from Seattle has booked thousands of cruise vacations in her 15-year career, but she never expected to become the subject of one of her own horror stories. Jennifer specializes in luxury cruise packages for clients seeking premium ocean experiences, and she prides herself on personally inspecting the ships and accommodations she recommends to ensure the highest quality service. In January of 2024, she boarded the Mediterranean Star for a familiarization cruise designed to give travel professionals first-hand experience with the ship's amenities and service standards. What she encountered in the passenger staterooms during that 7-day voyage through the Western Mediterranean challenged everything she thought she knew about identity, reality, and the nature of human existence itself. Jennifer contacted me through a secure travel industry communication platform after reading about my research into unexplained cruise ship phenomena. She was initially hesitant to share her experience, concerned about the potential impact on her professional reputation and client relationships. The travel industry is built on trust and reliability, and stories about supernatural encounters could damage her credibility with both cruise lines and customers. But the events she witnessed aboard the Mediterranean Star had left her questioning her own sanity and searching for explanations that conventional logic could not provide. The Mediterranean Star was a luxury vessel carrying 2,000 passengers on a 7-day itinerary from Barcelona to Rome, with stops in Palma de Mallorca, Cannes, and Livorno. As part of the familiarization program, Jennifer was assigned a premium balcony stateroom on Deck 8 and given access to all ship facilities, dining venues, and entertainment options. The goal was to experience the cruise from a passenger's perspective while gathering detailed information about amenities, service quality, and overall guest satisfaction that she could share with potential clients. For the first 3 days of the cruise, everything proceeded exactly as Jennifer expected from a high-end luxury vessel. The ship's service was impeccable, the dining options were exceptional, and her stateroom exceeded the standards she typically recommended to clients. Jennifer documented every aspect of her experience, taking photographs of facilities, sampling different restaurants, and attending various entertainment programs to provide comprehensive feedback to her clients about the Mediterranean Star's offerings. The first sign that something unusual was happening came on the 4th day of the cruise, as the ship sailed between Cannes and Livorno. Jennifer was returning to her stateroom after dinner when she noticed another passenger in the corridor outside her cabin. The woman appeared to be in her mid-30s, with shoulder-length dark hair and wearing an elegant evening dress that suggested she had just left the ship's formal dining room. What struck Jennifer as odd was that the woman appeared to be trying to enter the stateroom directly across from Jennifer's cabin, using a key card that did not seem to be working properly. Jennifer approached the woman to offer assistance, thinking that perhaps she was having trouble with a malfunctioning key card or had become confused about her cabin number after the evening's wine service. But when Jennifer spoke to the woman, asking if she needed help finding her stateroom, the woman turned toward her with a look of complete confusion and terror. She stared at Jennifer as if she had never seen another human being before, her mouth moving silently as if trying to speak, but producing no sound. Before Jennifer could ask any additional questions, the mysterious woman simply vanished, not walked away quickly or ducked into another cabin, but literally disappeared from the corridor as if she had never been there at all. Jennifer stood alone in the hallway, staring at the space where the woman had been standing seconds earlier, wondering if she had imagined the entire encounter. The corridor was well lit, and there was nowhere the woman could have gone without Jennifer seeing her movement. Jennifer checked with the guest services desk the following morning to inquire about the passenger who occupied the stateroom across from hers, thinking that perhaps the woman had been having genuine difficulty with her accommodations. But when she provided the cabin number to the guest services representative, she was told that the stateroom was unoccupied for the entire cruise. According to the ship's records, that particular cabin had not been booked by any passenger, and the electronic lock system showed no record of anyone attempting to enter the room. More disturbing discoveries followed when Jennifer began paying closer attention to other passengers throughout the ship. Over the next 2 days, she encountered several individuals who displayed the same strange behavior as the woman she had seen in the corridor. These passengers would appear in various locations around the ship, sometimes sitting alone in lounges or dining areas, other times standing at railings on outdoor decks, but always with the same expression of confusion and fear when other people approached them. What made these encounters truly unsettling was that these mysterious passengers seemed to exist in a state of partial visibility. Other guests would walk past them without acknowledgement, as if they were not there at all. When Jennifer pointed out these individuals to fellow passengers or crew members, they would look directly at the locations she indicated and insist that they saw nothing unusual. The phantom passengers appeared to be visible only to Jennifer, creating an increasingly isolating and frightening experience as the cruise continued. Jennifer began documenting these encounters with her camera, hoping to capture photographic evidence of the mysterious passengers she was observing throughout the ship. But when she reviewed the images later, she discovered that the photographs showed only empty spaces where the phantom passengers had been standing. Deck chairs that appeared to be occupied by mysterious individuals showed up as vacant in the pictures. Dining tables where Jennifer had observed the ghostly passengers having meals appeared completely unoccupied in the photographic record. The most disturbing encounter occurred on the 6th day of the cruise, as the Mediterranean Star approached the port of Civitavecchia near Rome. Jennifer was enjoying a quiet morning coffee on her balcony when she noticed movement in the stateroom balcony directly across from hers. The same woman she had first encountered in the corridor was standing at the balcony railing, looking out at the Italian coastline with an expression of profound sadness and longing. Jennifer called out to the woman, but received no response. The mysterious passenger continued to stare at the approaching coastline as if she were seeing something that no one else could perceive. Jennifer decided to go to the woman's stateroom to check on her well-being, concerned that she might be experiencing some kind of medical emergency or psychological crisis that was preventing her from responding to attempts at communication. When Jennifer knocked on the door of the stateroom where she had seen the woman, There was no answer. She contacted guest services and requested a wellness check, expressing concern about a passenger who appeared to be in distress. 2 crew members accompanied Jennifer to the stateroom and used their master key to enter the cabin. The room was completely empty and showed no signs of occupancy. The bed had not been slept in, no personal belongings were present, and the bathroom showed no evidence of use. Most shocking of all, when Jennifer looked out at the balcony where she had just seen the mysterious woman standing, she discovered that the balcony door was locked from the inside, and the outdoor space was completely empty. There was no way the woman could have left the balcony without going through the stateroom. Yet she had somehow vanished without a trace from a space that Jennifer had been watching continuously. The crew members who conducted the wellness check seemed genuinely puzzled by Jennifer's report. They confirmed that the stateroom had not been assigned to any passenger for the entire cruise, and that the ship's electronic access system showed no record of anyone entering or leaving the cabin. The balcony Jennifer claimed to have seen occupied was accessible only through the stateroom, making it impossible for anyone to have been standing there without having entered the room first. Jennifer spent her final day aboard the Mediterranean Star, researching the ship's history and speaking discreetly with long-term crew members about any unusual incidents or passenger experiences. What she discovered was a pattern of similar encounters that had been reported by guests and staff members over several years of operation. Multiple passengers had described seeing individuals who appeared to be fellow travelers, but who could not be located in the ship's passenger manifest or confirmed by other witnesses. One crew member, speaking confidentially, told Jennifer that the Mediterranean Star had been constructed using materials and components salvaged from older cruise vessels that had been decommissioned or destroyed. The ship's interior furnishings, decorative elements, and even some structural components had been recycled from previous luxury liners to reduce construction costs and maintain the classic elegance that passengers expected from traditional cruise experiences. The crew members suggested that the phantom passengers Jennifer had encountered might be the spirits or psychic imprints of individuals who had sailed on the previous ships whose materials had been incorporated into the Mediterranean Star. These ghostly travelers, he theorized, remained connected to the physical objects and spaces where they had experienced significant emotional events, continuing to travel on cruise ships even after their deaths because their consciousness had become permanently attached to the vessels themselves. Jennifer disembarked the Mediterranean Star in Rome with a comprehensive report about the ship's amenities and services, but she never shared the information with her clients. Instead, she stopped booking cruises on that particular vessel and began researching other ships in her portfolio to determine whether similar phantom passenger encounters had been reported by travelers or crew members. Her investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of ships throughout the cruise industry, where passengers reported seeing individuals who did not officially exist according to manifest records. Jennifer continues to work as a travel agent in Seattle, but she now focuses primarily on land-based vacations and avoids booking cruise packages whenever possible. When clients specifically request ocean travel, she carefully researches each ship's history and construction details, avoiding vessels that have been built using recycled materials from older cruise ships, or that have histories of passenger disappearances or unexplained incidents. The experience aboard the Mediterranean Star convinced Jennifer that some cruise ships serve as floating repositories of human consciousness, where the emotional energy and memories of previous passengers become permanently embedded in the vessel's structure and continue to manifest as phantom travelers who exist in a state between life and death. These ghostly passengers, she believes, are trapped in an eternal cruise experience, forever sailing between ports they can never reach, seeking connections with living travelers who may be able to see them, but can never truly help them find their way home. Most passengers never see the miles of maintenance tunnels that run through modern cruise ships. Maintenance worker Jake Thompson from Denver wishes he had never seen them either. Jake worked as a mechanical systems specialist aboard the Grand Voyager for 18 months, spending his shifts in the labyrinthine network of service corridors, utility rooms, and maintenance spaces that exist hidden beneath the glamorous passenger decks. What he discovered in those dark passages during the final weeks of his contract in February of 2024 convinced him that some areas of cruise ships should remain sealed forever, protecting both the living and whatever dwells in the mechanical depths from encounters that defy rational explanation. Jake contacted me through an industrial workers forum after reading about my research into unexplained maritime incidents. He was reluctant to discuss his experiences initially, concerned about violating his employment contract's confidentiality clauses, and worried about the impact on his future career prospects in the maritime industry. But the psychological trauma from his time aboard the Grand Voyager had made it impossible for him to continue working on ships, and he hoped that sharing his story might help him process what he had experienced in the mechanical depths of the vessel. The Grand Voyager was a massive cruise ship carrying over 4,000 passengers on 7-day Caribbean itineraries from Miami. The vessel featured 15 passenger decks above the waterline, but Jake's work took place in the 5 mechanical levels below the main deck, areas that passengers never saw and most crew members rarely visited. These levels house the ship's power generation systems, water treatment facilities, waste management equipment, and the complex network of pipes, cables, and ventilation ducts that kept the floating city operational. Jake's responsibilities included routine maintenance of mechanical systems, emergency repairs, and compliance inspections of safety equipment throughout the ship's lower levels. The work required him to navigate through narrow service corridors, crawl spaces, and utility tunnels that connected different mechanical rooms and provided access to equipment located throughout the vessel. Most of this work was performed alone during night shifts, when passenger activities were minimal, and major mechanical systems could be taken offline for maintenance without disrupting cruise operations. For the first 15 months of his employment, Jake found the work challenging but routine. The ship's mechanical systems were well designed and properly maintained, and the service tunnels provided efficient access to equipment throughout the vessel. Jake became familiar with every corridor, utility room, and crawl space in the ship's lower levels, developing an intimate knowledge of the mechanical infrastructure that kept the Grand Voyager operational during its continuous cycle of Caribbean cruises. The first indication that something unusual was happening in the maintenance tunnels came during Jake's 16th month aboard the Grand Voyager. He was performing routine inspection of the water treatment systems located on the lowest mechanical level when he discovered that several service corridors he had used regularly for over a year had somehow changed configuration. Passages that should have connected to familiar utility rooms instead led to areas of the ship that Jake had never seen before, despite his extensive knowledge of the vessel's layout. Initially, Jake attributed these navigation difficulties to fatigue and the disorienting effect of working alone in windowless spaces for extended periods. The ship's lower levels were designed like a 3-dimensional maze, with multiple corridors, stairwells, and access points that could be confusing even for experienced maintenance personnel. But as these incidents continued to occur, Jake began to realize that the physical layout of the service tunnels was somehow changing in ways that defied architectural logic. Jake started carrying a handheld GPS device and digital compass to help navigate through the maintenance tunnels, but discovered that both instruments became unreliable in certain areas of the ship's lower levels. The GPS would lose satellite signal despite being designed to work in enclosed spaces, and the compass would spin wildly or point in directions that contradicted the ship's known orientation. Most disturbing of all, Jake began encountering service corridors and utility rooms that did not appear on any of the ship's architectural plans or maintenance diagrams. The situation escalated dramatically during Jake's 17th month aboard the Grand Voyager, when he became lost in the maintenance tunnels during a routine repair assignment. He had entered a familiar service corridor to access a water pump that required replacement, following a route he had used dozens of times before. But when he attempted to return to the main mechanical level after completing the repair, Jake discovered that the corridor no longer led back to the familiar areas of the ship. For over 6 hours, Jake searched through service tunnels and utility rooms, trying to find his way back to the main mechanical areas. The passages seemed to reconfigure themselves as he moved through them, with corridors leading to dead ends or looping back on themselves in impossible geometric patterns. His radio communications with other crew members became increasingly distorted the deeper he went into the unfamiliar areas, until he lost contact entirely with the outside world. During his extended navigation through the change tunnels, Jake began encountering evidence of other people who had been in these areas before him. He found personal belongings scattered throughout the service corridors, including tools, identification badges, and personal items that belonged to crew members from different cruise lines and time periods. Some of the items appeared to be decades old, suggesting that people had been getting lost in these maintenance tunnels for years without anyone reporting their disappearances. Most disturbing of all, Jake began hearing voices echoing through the ventilation system and service corridors. The voices spoke in different languages and seemed to belong to people who were lost, confused, and calling for help. Jake tried to follow the sounds to locate other crew members who might be trapped in the maze-like tunnels. But the voices always seemed to be coming from areas just beyond his reach, leading him deeper into sections of the ship that became increasingly unfamiliar and threatening. When Jake finally found his way back to the main mechanical level, nearly 8 hours after he had entered the service corridor for what should have been a 30-minute repair job, he discovered that no one had reported him missing. According to the ship's work log and his supervisor's records, Jake had completed his assigned repair and returned to the main maintenance area exactly on schedule. The digital timestamp on his completed work order showed that he had been gone for only the expected half hour, despite his personal experience of being lost for most of his shift. Jake reported the incident to his supervisor, describing his experience of becoming lost in unfamiliar service tunnels and finding evidence of other crew members who might be trapped in the ship's lower levels. But when they reviewed the ship's architectural plans and conducted an inspection of the areas Jake described, they found only the familiar network of service corridors and utility rooms that had been part of the ship's original design. There were no unexplored areas, no evidence of missing crew members, and no explanation for Jake's reported experience of being lost for hours in passages that should have been completely familiar to him. The supervisor suggested that Jake might be experiencing stress-related disorientation from working alone in enclosed spaces for extended periods, a condition that occasionally affected maintenance personnel on long cruise assignments. Jake was scheduled for a psychological evaluation and temporarily reassigned to day shift duties with other crew members. But the changes did not stop his encounters with the mysterious areas of the ship's maintenance systems. During his final month aboard the Grand Voyager, Jake continued to experience incidents where familiar service corridors would lead to unfamiliar areas of the ship. But now, instead of becoming lost himself, he began encountering other maintenance workers who appeared to be trapped in the maze-like tunnel system. These individuals wore crew uniforms from different cruise lines and seemed to be from different time periods, but all shared the same expression of confusion and desperation that Jake had felt during his own experience of being lost in the changing passages. Jake tried to help these trapped crew members find their way back to the main mechanical areas, but discovered that they could not be led out of the mysterious tunnel system. When Jake attempted to guide them through service corridors that should have led to familiar areas of the ship, the passages would reconfigure themselves to prevent their escape. The trapped workers seemed to be permanently caught in a shifting labyrinth that existed within the ship's maintenance infrastructure. unable to find their way back to the world of the living crew and passengers. The most terrifying encounter occurred during Jake's final week aboard the Grand Voyager, when he discovered a section of the maintenance tunnels that contained dozens of crew members from different cruise lines and time periods, all trapped in the maze-like passage system. Some appeared to have been there for years, wearing uniforms from cruise lines that had ceased operations decades earlier. Others seemed to be more recent additions to this ghostly crew of lost maintenance workers, including several individuals that Jake recognized as crew members who had supposedly left the Grand Voyager to work on other ships. Jake realized that the maintenance tunnels of the Grand Voyager had become a supernatural trap that captured maintenance workers and kept them imprisoned in an ever-changing maze of service corridors and utility rooms. The trapped crew members continued to perform their maintenance duties in this parallel version of the ship's infrastructure, working endlessly to maintain equipment that existed only in the supernatural realm, while their physical bodies disappeared from the world of the living. When Jake completed his contract and left the Grand Voyager, he discovered that several crew members who had worked in the ship's maintenance department during his time aboard had been reported as having left for positions on other vessels, but had never actually arrived at their new assignments. These workers had simply vanished from the maritime employment system, leaving no trace of their whereabouts or their fate in the supernatural labyrinth beneath the passenger decks. Jake now works as a building maintenance supervisor in Denver, avoiding any employment opportunities that would require him to work alone in enclosed spaces or underground areas. He has researched other reports of missing maintenance workers on cruise ships and discovered a disturbing pattern of crew members who disappear from mechanical areas and are never seen again. Jake believes that certain cruise ships, particularly older vessels, or those built using recycled materials from decommissioned ships, contain supernatural spaces that exist parallel to the normal ship infrastructure, trapping maintenance workers in an eternal cycle of labor in the hidden depths where no passenger will ever venture to discover their fate. Travel blogger Sarah Mitchell from Nashville documented everything during her solo cruise aboard the Atlantic Explorer in March of 2024, right up until the ship arrived at a port that should not exist. Sarah's travel blog had gained a following of over 50,000 readers who relied on her detailed reviews of cruise ships, destinations, and travel experiences around the world. She prided herself on thorough documentation, photographing every aspect of her journeys and providing comprehensive guides that helped other travelers plan their own adventures. But the final entry in her blog from the Atlantic Explorer cruise contained revelations that challenged everything she thought she knew about reality, time, and the nature of ocean travel itself. Sarah contacted me through an encrypted messaging service after discovering my research into unexplained cruise ship phenomena. She had been reluctant to publish her final blog post about the Atlantic Explorer voyage, concerned that readers would question her credibility and mental stability. The events she experienced during the cruise's final day had left her questioning her own sanity. But the photographic evidence she collected provided disturbing confirmation that something impossible had occurred. During what should have been a routine Caribbean cruise, the Atlantic Explorer was a mid-sized luxury vessel operating a 7-day itinerary from Miami to various Caribbean destinations, marketed as an intimate cruise experience for travelers seeking a more refined alternative to megaships. Sarah had booked a balcony stateroom for her solo journey, planning to document the ship's amenities, dining options, and port experiences for her blog's audience of independent travelers. The cruise was scheduled to visit Nassau, Half Moon Cay, and Costa Maya before returning to Miami on March 21st. For the first 6 days of the cruise, everything proceeded exactly as advertised in the ship's marketing materials. Sarah documented elegant dining experiences, photographed the ship's sophisticated decor, and wrote detailed reviews of the service quality and entertainment options. Her daily blog posts attracted enthusiastic comments from readers who were considering booking similar cruises, and Sarah was pleased with the comprehensive content she was creating about the Atlantic Explorer experience. The first sign that something unusual was happening came on the morning of March 20th, as the ship was scheduled to arrive at its final port of Costa Maya, Mexico. Sarah woke early to photograph the sunrise from her balcony, a routine she had followed throughout the cruise. But instead of the familiar coastline of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula that she had researched extensively in preparation for the port visit, Sarah observed a landmass that did not match any of the geographical features she expected to see. The coastline visible from the ship appeared to be much more mountainous than the flat terrain of Costa Maya, with volcanic peaks rising dramatically from the ocean and thick tropical vegetation covering steep hillsides that descended directly into deep blue water. More puzzling still, the architectural structures visible along the shoreline looked nothing like the modern resort developments and archaeological sites that should have been present at Costa Maya. Instead, Sarah observed what appeared to be ancient stone buildings with distinctive architectural styles that reminded her of pre-Columbian civilizations, but constructed on a scale and with a level of sophistication that exceeded anything she had seen in her extensive travels through Central America. Sarah immediately checked her location using her smartphone's GPS application, but discovered that the device was unable to determine their position. The GPS showed only error messages indicating that satellite signals were not available, despite the clear weather conditions and open ocean environment where such signals should have been easily accessible. Her phone's compass spun wildly and provided no consistent directional information, making it impossible to determine the ship's orientation relative to known geographical landmarks. When Sarah contacted the guest services desk to inquire about their arrival location, she was told that the ship was arriving at Costa Maya exactly as scheduled in the cruise itinerary. The staff member she spoke with seemed genuinely confused by her questions about the mountainous coastline, insisting that Costa Maya was well known for its beautiful beaches and flat terrain. When Sarah described the volcanic peaks and ancient architecture she was observing from her balcony, the staff member suggested that she might be looking at cloud formations or distant weather systems that were creating optical illusions. But Sarah's photographs told a different story. The images she captured from her balcony clearly showed a coastline that bore no resemblance to the Costa Maya region of Mexico. The volcanic mountains were clearly defined against the sky, and the stone structures along the shoreline showed intricate architectural details that could not be dismissed as natural formations or optical effects. Most intriguing of all, the ancient buildings appeared to be inhabited, with smoke rising from cooking fires and small boats moving between the shore and what appeared to be a substantial harbor facility. As the Atlantic Explorer approached this mysterious port, Sarah observed other ships anchored in the harbor that did not match the typical commercial and cruise vessels she expected to see at a modern Mexican port. Some of the vessels appeared to be historical ships from different time periods, including sailing ships that looked like they belonged in maritime museums and steamships that had not been in active service for decades. Other ships in the harbor had designs that Sarah could not identify, featuring architectural elements and propulsion systems that seemed both ancient and impossibly advanced. When the Atlantic Explorer docked at the mysterious port, Sarah disembarked with the other passengers to explore what she initially assumed was an undiscovered or misidentified destination that would provide unique content for her travel blog. But the experience of walking through the port facility immediately revealed that this was not simply an unfamiliar Caribbean location. The stone buildings she had observed from the ship were indeed ancient, but they showed no signs of weathering or decay that would be expected from pre-Columbian archaeological sites. Instead, they appeared to be actively maintained and occupied by people who seemed to represent different historical periods and cultures. Sarah encountered individuals dressed in clothing styles from various eras of human history, from what appeared to be ancient Mediterranean civilizations to medieval European merchants to modern travelers wearing contemporary casual attire. These diverse groups of people moved through the port facility as if such temporal and cultural mixing were completely normal, conducting business transactions, sharing meals at outdoor markets, and engaging in social interactions that suggested they all belonged to the same community, despite their obviously different origins. The most disturbing aspect of Sarah's exploration of this impossible port was her growing realization that many of the people she encountered appeared to be individuals who had been reported missing from cruise ships over the years. Using her skills as a travel blogger to engage strangers in conversation and gather information, Sarah spoke with several individuals who described arriving at the port as passengers on various cruise ships that had sailed from different decades and different departure ports around the world. One woman Sarah met claimed to have been a passenger on the Titanic who had somehow survived the sinking and found herself aboard a modern cruise ship that eventually brought her to this timeless port. Another individual described boarding a cruise ship in the 1970s for what was supposed to be a Caribbean vacation, but instead arriving at this mysterious destination where he had remained for what seemed like years without aging or experiencing the passage of time in the normal way. Sarah documented these encounters with her camera and recording equipment, but discovered that her electronic devices were producing increasingly unreliable results. Photographs of the people she met showed only empty spaces or indistinct shadows, despite the fact that she could see and interact with them clearly. Audio recordings of her conversations contained only static or incomprehensible sounds that bore no resemblance to the detailed discussions she was having with the port's mysterious inhabitants. As Sarah explored deeper into the port facility, she discovered areas that seemed to exist outside the normal flow of time and space. She found herself walking through corridors that led to rooms from different cruise ships she had sailed on during her blogging career, including staterooms from vessels that were thousands of miles away or that had been decommissioned years earlier. These familiar spaces were populated by passengers and crew members she remembered from previous cruises, all of whom seemed to be continuing their vacation experiences in an eternal loop of cruise ship activities. The most terrifying revelation came when Sarah encountered a section of the port that contained travel bloggers and journalists like herself. Individuals who had been documenting cruise experiences when they somehow became trapped in this timeless destination. These fellow travel writers showed her evidence that the mysterious port existed as a collection point for people who had become too deeply connected to the cruise ship experience, drawing them away from the normal world into a realm where vacation experiences continued indefinitely without ever reaching a true conclusion. When the Atlantic Explorer's departure horn sounded, signaling the end of the port visit, Sarah faced a choice that would determine her fate. She could return to the ship and attempt to continue her normal life as a travel blogger, or she could remain in the mysterious port and join the eternal community of travelers who had found their way to this impossible destination. The decision became more difficult when she realized that many of the people she had met at the port seemed genuinely happy with their timeless existence. Existence free from the concerns and responsibilities of the modern world. Sarah chose to return to the Atlantic Explorer, but the journey back to Miami proceeded in ways that defied her understanding of geography and time. The ship seemed to sail through multiple different ocean environments, passing islands and coastal regions that did not appear on any maps she had studied. The other passengers aboard the ship appeared to have no memory of visiting the mysterious port, instead describing a normal day at Costa Maya, visiting beaches and shopping for souvenirs at typical tourist attractions. When Sarah reviewed the photographs and notes from her final port visit, she discovered that most evidence of her experience had been altered or erased. Pictures that had shown the ancient architecture and impossible harbor now displayed typical beach scenes from Costa Maya. Her written notes describing the timeless port had been replaced with standard travel observations about Mexican coastal tourism. Even her blog's server logs showed no evidence that she had attempted to upload content about the mysterious final destination. Sarah published one final blog post about the Atlantic Explorer cruise, providing conventional reviews of the ship's amenities and standard descriptions of the scheduled port visits. But she never boarded another cruise ship, instead focusing her travel blog on land-based destinations where ports of call exist on maps, and the people she meets remain in the photographs she takes. She continues to research reports of cruise passengers who have disappeared during port visits, discovering a pattern of individuals who vanish while exploring destinations that cannot be found on any chart of the world's oceans, places where the boundary between vacation fantasy and eternal reality has been permanently erased.